Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast with Benji Naesen. We just did the emergency podcast about the Tom Dumoulin news, so we're dating ourselves. This is being recorded on the 23rd of January. Probably would have been good practice for me to mention the date we're recorded for a lot of these, given that there's news coming out all the time that is changing things. So we usually record these on a 5 to 7 day in advance, and we thought it would be safe to do so in January with not too much racing going on, but random stuff keeps happening. But Benji, you might want to mention what we're doing with the Twitter account, plug that a little bit better.
Regarding Twitter, we're trying to keep you all up to date with what we're posting. So roughly a week from before, we're trying to announce what podcasts we're going to be releasing. We try to announce which guests are coming on the podcast, and just genuinely an extra means of communication with the people who listen and watch to our podcast. So if you want to see it, it's Lanterne Rouge CP on Twitter. Check it out and give it a follow.
See, I obviously don't know how Twitter works, but Benji reliably is trying to show me how it works, but I'm not learning very quickly. This is the team Qhubeka Assos, never know which way to pronounce it. Assos are now the title sponsor. NTT last year was the name of this team, and NTT have pulled out. They were really, really struggling with funding, unfortunately. I was about to call them an African team. I'm not really sure if they are an African team anymore, if that's the right way to characterize them. I mean, it might be where the license is held or whatever, but there's not very many African riders or young African riders being signed to this team. I'm glad they got funding to continue for another year or so. I wouldn't say it's really a world tour level team, but we'll get into that in a second. They're staying at World Tour level for 2021. You know the rules by now. The structure of this is 2020 review, transfers, picking the teams for monuments and grand tours, and then us giving our hot takes and predictions for their season in 2021. 2020 season, Benji, 9 wins according to PCS, but one of those was the European Championships when Nizzolo was riding for Italy, but I guess he gets to wear that European Champs jersey for them this year. That's a par year for me for this team. Do you think I'm overrating it?
It's difficult with a team like what they had last year. Otto started great at the Giro, and if he was able to keep that up until the end, we would have looked at it very differently. Nizzolo had a good start to the season, and it sucks for the team, NTT, that the majority of his wins were ones where he wasn't necessarily riding in their colors. Well, not for their goals at least. NC of Italy, European Championships, Pyrenees a stage win, so Nizzolo got something there. And then that sent us to another one. But I think that O'Connor was one of the riders that kind of brought it forward more in the Giro with that stage win. And outside of that, the team was kind of lacking. I don't know what else they could have done, though. It's harsh, but a lot of people call it a retirement home for cyclists because towards the end of the career, they're moving towards NTT. I find that on one end a bit harsh because there's a lot of young talent in that team as well that might have actually left towards a Qhubeka thing, because once we go into transfers in a second here, we're going to see so many different riders change team that it's going to get pretty mad. But they're also kind of right on the retirement home aspect in the sense that the likes of an Enrico Gasparotto, he was not going to move the needle really in his last years of his career. Kreuziger is also at a point where his career is ending and he's moving into Pro Conti in 2021. So, yeah, I think that Qhubeka might be a change in that. I do want to talk about the African aspect, like you said, once we get to the transfer side, because I've got a proper opinion on that. But regarding last year, it's on par with what you could expect from a team like NTT. That's the only thing I can really add. But next to that, I don't think there's anything else we could have expected, but it's also not a wonderful performance over the year.
I think they got a bit unlucky, as you said. Also, the Nizzolo coming into the Tour de France, Nizzolo was flying, and then he had a crash, right? And that's why he DNF'd the Tour de France.
Yep.
And that affected him in those sprint stages. Still got third in Sisteron. So he had fifth in MSR, first in Italy National Championships, first in the European Championships. And that was against, I think, Benji, Ackermann, MVDP, and Demar in that Plouay course. So that was a really solid victory against top competition. And I think Nizzolo was taking a step up. And yeah, that crash kind of, maybe they would have had more wins. But I think it was their most wins in a couple of years. They got a Grand Tour win with Ben O'Connor. But so I think that's par or slightly above par. The problem is now, as we get into the transfers, as Benji alluded to, that Grand Tour win came from Ben O'Connor, and they didn't re-sign him. He went out the door to Asia Tour, and you might be thinking, oh well, he got a big deal at Asia Tour, but I don't think he did. I think he seemed to be struggling to get a contract, and he's only on a 1-year deal at Asia Tour. So, like, he would have been one of the first guys I would have been re-signing. But there's a lot of movement in and out of this team. If you go on, we're looking at Pro Cycling Stats. If you go and look at their transfers, it is, I can't count, like 15 riders in, nearly 20 riders out or something. Like, what do you think of the highlight ones we should be talking about, Benji?
I think we can go over the main ones indeed, and let's start talking about the people that left the team. I think we see a lot of the people I just spoke about in that retirement home aspect of what NTT was for many people. Danilo did not deserve to be in World Tour last year, and he was, and he's now not in that anymore. So he hasn't even found a contract and a team to go to. I think that's sucks for him, but I think there's better riders that could get into World Tour than Danilo is at the moment. Bosenhagen to Pro Conti, Team Total Direct Energy. Gazprom with Kreuziger, same story. Enrico Gasparotto ending a wonderful career of Amstel stories. If you want to see more about Gasparotto and Amstel, I think you've got a video of that, right?
Yeah. I got a dedication to Enrico Gasparotto. Very few riders have got that. Only Finney and Gaspar, I think.
Then Valgren, kind of the same story, but Valgren might still have stuff to offer, to be honest. That the Evidication Fast Nippo. Apparently the first is gone in that name. Just confused the hell out of me. Louis Mankis to Intermarché. He was the man that was the future of South Africa a few years ago, and he just didn't deliver in the end. I think he had some injuries along the way, so can't put all the blame on just him not performing enough. But it didn't happen. That's what I mean to say. And I think they've also lost part of their talent. Batistella, Shinomeda.
Yeah.
We spoke about him on one of the previous podcasts when he joined Bahrain Victorious. Ben O'Connor was really good at the Giro. You said it. They've lost that man. And then just a few transfers that wouldn't necessarily be considered the all-out talent, but could be good teammates in a team that is Walter. That's the likes of Gibbons, the likes of the Bod. So Barrow could count as a talent, though. Forgot about him there.
Yep.
And that's kind of the all overview of the people that left the team. So it's not per se that I'm saying that they lost the best riders in the world, but they lost a bit of the basics of what the team stands for. And I think that goes a lot into that African aspect.
Well, they lost 5 African riders and they didn't re-sign any.
Yeah, that's one of the real notable things when it comes to Qhubeka now, because Qhubeka is obviously known for being, I think they're a bike thing for Africa, right? That they try and get bikes to the people that can't access studies or anything in local areas in Africa. And it's kind of like...
it's a South African not-for-profit that donates bicycles as part of the World Bicycle Relief Charity Program in South Africa, is what it says on Wikipedia.
Okay, good. That's a correct statement, because I was like working off scraps of information I know about it. It's an awesome project, but I remember them back in the day when it was MTN Qhubeka speaking about, we want to bring this African environment forward, the African cycling environment, and
to be a development pathway for them, to be a world tour landing destination for talented African cyclists.
And while I, on one end, think they're doing that with their development team, Team Qhubeka, who is now an Italian team, and not necessarily an African team anymore at its core, they are not signing the best African riders. And we've spoken about it a lot. Girmay, I know you're going to be so angry at us for bringing it up again, but this team needs Girmay. Like, it is in their DNA, and they don't have him, and it hurts me so much. They do have Henok Mulubran, I think that's how you pronounce it, planned to join in 2021 according to his PCS page, but if I look at the team PCS page of 2021, he's still in the development team, so I'm not sure if that's correct. I would have already had him in the World Tour team personally. I think he's got enough talent to be in the World Tour team. And I think there's people in the World Tour team in 2021 that are not per se better than Henok Mulebron. So the Eritrean would have deserved to be up there, and he's got some proper results. So a bit disappointing on my end that a rider like that doesn't get an opportunity in their World Tour yet this year. Most likely in the future, but who knows? Perhaps some other World Tour team goes in and is like, oh, we're going to get rid of him as well, and we're going to take him from Qhubeka. So that's one of the things that annoys me with the transfers. Anyway, back to the transfers themselves. The income. What is the who are the riders that you are like, this is a good transfer?
Oh, well, I just want to echo what you said, Benji, and I don't want to put words in someone's mouth, but I can't remember who said it. But they were like, "Oh, why are you criticizing us? There's not enough, talented African riders to sign." And I think that's plainly false. I mean, if people like Robert Power are getting, speaking of people that are transferred in, people like Robert Power getting sort of second opportunities at World Tour level. He's 25 now. He's not actually that young. He's on a 1-year deal, but he's getting a second chance at World Tour level. And he's getting signed. So there are other African riders just as talented as him. That being said, do I wish that Biniam Girmay had gone to Qhubeka? No, because honestly, I think a 4-year deal at Nippo is probably better, like for stability, for race program and everything like that, and opportunities. So because I don't really have too much faith in this team, and I worry about its sustainability. It seems to have serious funding issues, and I'm not sure they are resolved even in the medium term. But the incoming riders, Sergio Henao and Fabio Aru, both from UAE Team Emirates. I don't think Aru is going to do too much. I'm worried about Fabio Aru. I wouldn't be surprised if he retired early as well. Simon Clark, quite a good signing. He did well at Royal Bernard Drome last year for EF Pro Cycling. Australian veteran. He can always go stage hunting in a Grand Tour and is always up there and capable of winning a Grand Tour stage. Dimitri Kleis, we mentioned on the Cofidis podcast. Good cobbler, top 10 in Flanders maybe, Benji, and probably be doing well in Paris-Roubaix. We thought that. I think that's a good signing. And just going down the list, Varcek, reasonably good signing. Because he's quite young, I think. But other than that, I don't really know too much about the rest. Robert Power, he did well in Strade and showed early that he was quite good at Sunweb in like 2018. But yeah, it kind of plateaued since then. But what are some other names on here, Benji? You're going to have to help me out. Some of them are coming up from Conti and they're pro Conti level, like Mauro Schmidt and Emil Vendieba from Real Securitas Cycling Team. Any real talents in there we should mark down in our black books?
I think that Vendieba is a rider that indeed comes from Real, but in general, he is, in my eyes, teammate material. He has, over the years, gotten top 10 results in Danish classics, but he's already 26. We cannot forget about that aspect. It's not like he's 23 or 22 and moving forward in that way. That being said, he's not a terrible time trialist. He is not a terrible flat/cobble guy, but he's not going to move the needle for Qhubeka. So they've got to find a way to use him in a effective way, but it most likely will be as a domestique from what I can see. The races that he's good at is the likes of a Trobro Leon. 2019 Trobro Leon, third. That's a good result. And I think if you send this guy to likes of Paris Tour and such, he can get results. He DNF'd in that in 2019. I don't know if that's a injury or anything like that. So unsure about that. He's just a consistently decent rider, but he's not going to be the one that wins the races for Qhubeka. Mauro Schmidt, I honestly did not know until I opened today's Qhubeka page. I am not too confident in him. He looks like he's one of those young riders that we spoke about earlier. If he's good, and he surely signed until 2022, if he's good after those 2 years, another team is going to steal him. And if he's not good enough, then he might stay, but he's not going to be moving the needle for Qhubeka. So, yeah, again, it's one of those mid-tier youth riders. I think his better results are like 4th in the ITT U23 of Switzerland, but getting 4th on that means there's three youngsters that are better in Switzerland at time trialing. And yeah, on paper, that's going to mean that there's at least like 50 younger riders in general that are better than him at time trialing all over. So again, I don't think he's going to make the biggest difference. And that's kind of everything when it comes to the youngsters that they signed. Vacek was really good when it comes to the youngster, but it looks like, according to his career, he's lowered and lowered when it comes to the quality. I think 2018 was his best year, where he basically top three'd everything he rode, which is kind of mad. 2019, that wasn't really the case. And I think the year that Remco was winning the Junior World Championships,
Yeah,
Vacek was the rider that
there,
was
yeah.
one of the last ones together with the German rider.
But he's
Hoffmeyer, I
only
think.
20. He's only 20 years old. I think
Yep.
that signing on perfect. He's not really had a chance at World Tour level. I think a lot of these other
Yeah, but
riders
1 year.
who have had this is their second and third chance now at sort of, and they're in their mid-20s, then I just don't see it happening. Simon Clark, I think still, if he's on a decent contract, is a nice signing. Fabio
Yes.
Aru, what do you think? What do you think about Fabio Aru, Benji? I mean, the way UAE treated him, I think, was like, I understand their frustration. They were paying him so much money, but that's their fault for paying him that much money on that deal. And he never won a race for UAE, and I don't know the dynamics between them and whether he was a bad communicator or whatever. But frankly, the way UAE publicly commented on him
Denounced him, yeah.
after the Tour de France, I think, was really unprofessional, and I thought it was disgraceful, actually. Because it's one thing to say it was disappointing them, but they actually then really harmed his ability to get another contract after last year. And I just thought it was, if a guy's struggling like that mentally or with family issues or with whatever, and I know, just don't re-sign him, but I guess they were annoyed. But yeah, I just didn't think they needed to do that. That being said, I don't expect much from Aru this year either. I think I think he's not going to be competing at the top level GC wise. But you think he could go? Do you think he could win a Grand Tour stage, Benji?
I think everything would need to fall in place for that to happen. I do believe that he needs to try that. I think that in Grand Tours, he's often placed in a situation where he's forced to go to GC still because he did it in the past. And I think that this should be the year that they don't do that. They should send Aru to a Grand Tour and give him full freedom on trying to get stage wins and up that happiness in cycling again. He did cyclocross throughout the off season, and to me, it seems like he was really enjoying himself, and he found himself into a position where he's actually riding the World Championship cyclocross, which is, yeah, kind of mad. So I'm pretty happy there. It looks like he was having fun. It looks like the change from teams might be giving him a very positive effect in his career. Yeah, you were talking about perhaps an early retirement. I would not go as far yet. I think that this is a position that he's in. He's now at a new team. He's now in a new environment where he can try and prove himself again, but without too much pressure, because right now he's likely not on a big contract at Qhubeka, to be honest. And he's likely open to trying other stuff, to try and invent fun ways to get through his cycling career here. And I think that I kind of support him in that. I hope that he finds his way back into a competing manner. It doesn't need to be for Grand Tours. It doesn't need to be for the big guns. It can be just winning a small race would be amazing already for upping his happiness in cycling and upping his self-confidence, because I think that's a very big factor with all these riders that end up being injured for multiple years, that they are not sure what they can do against his own storming, amazing generation of Pogacars in the world. And I think that Aru just needs to find his place in the peloton right now, and I think that joining Qhubeka will have a positive effect on his career that way. But outside of him, plenty of other riders that joined the team. Sergio Henao, it's kind of the same situation, to be honest. He has also been pretty poor the last few years, and I'm not sure what to expect from him in the coming years. I hope he can find a spot again. But I think we mentioned it all round. I think that last year, their main rider was Nizzolo, and I think that's still going to be the same in 2021.
All right, let's move on to that then. Let's move to their their leaders and their teams for the various races, starting with the cobbled races, where I actually think their cobbled team is quite good, Benji. I mean,
Yep.
I think it's like low key really strong. Dimitri Kleis, good. Lucas Wisniewski, the Pole 29-year-old, he came second in Omloop in 2018. He's quite good. Harry
Yes.
Tanfield, 26-year-old big guy, big engine. He could be all right. Jan Lindemann. Oh, and Goggle. Sorry. So it was the three was Goggle, Kleis, and Wisniewski. I thought those trio is pretty solid. Is there anyone I'm missing that would be sort of with them in the cobbled races?
I would include Walscheid being top 30 in Tour of Flanders, definitely being able to show something for the team in that terrain. I recall, but I can't find it on his palmarès too early, that Barbero did cobbles at some point. For a Spanish rider, that's pretty special. I think that he got top 50s or something around 2018 in those cobble races, so he could be supportive in this terrain. I think that perhaps Campenaerts should go to these. I think he said something along those lines that he was going to expand himself outside of time trial, and I think cobble is the right area to do so. So I'm hoping that we can see Campenaerts give an attempt to the likes of an Omloop, to the likes of Paris-Roubaix most likely, because that has less hills to worry about.
Stock Pro.
And
Stock Pro will be going.
Stockbro, yes. That's also a name that I actually forgot to mention, but he's decent at the cobbles. I think it was mainly 2019 where he showed that he
He
can do
won
well. I
Baby
think he was
Flanders.
23. Yep, baby Flan. I love how you say that. Amazing. And would you send Nizzolo to the cobble race? I think we need to send him to Gent-Wevelgem because he can win the race.
Well, according to PCS, he's going to Omloop and Kerner. I can't see Gent-Wevelgem there because then he's going to San Remo and Giro. But I'm
Yeah,
not sure I trust that program entirely. I mean, he came second in Kerner this year, sixth in Le Samin. So, yeah, for the flat ones, for Kerner and Omloop and Gent-Wevelgem and Le Samin, I would be sending Nizzolo. I wouldn't send him to Tour of Flanders and not Roubaix either. But yeah, I think this is the strongest part of their team, Benji. They're cobbled and
I think so as well.
I think they could pick up a Bink Bank stage. Maybe if a Polonia stage is hard, E3. Like I think they could be pretty solid here and competitive in all the cobbled races. And I mean, I don't think they're on a low budget. They're struggling, but that's pretty good. I'm actually Lasse Norman Hansen. He's the Danish track guy right now. I don't know whether the Olympics will be impacting that. I think he got let go by Alpecin Phoenix because they didn't want to accommodate his like Olympics sort of preparation. So he might be in their classic squad too. So it's pretty strong all around if he's in there as well.
Yeah, but a bit of an intersection here,
Yeah.
just like in between here. We're talking about they're perhaps on a low budget, but if I recall correctly, a few weeks ago we heard that they were aiming for a 45 million budget, but it's a bit of a special situation because they have a partnership with someone who has to look for sponsors for the
Oh
team.
yeah. So
So over time, this could become a huge team if they actually get that 45 million.
like what they've done is the same sort of business structure as say Tour of Flanders owner, Flanders Classics, and Giro owner RCS. They sell the rights to sell the broadcast rights to an intermediary, third party that is quote unquote better at selling and distributing those assets and obtaining return on them. So Giro, RCS, and all their other races that RCS own, they sell that right to sell that to IMG, some media company, and then IMG sell them, try and obtain the most money or best return, and then they get a cut, and then the money goes back to RCS. Similar, so Qhubeka Assos, thanks for reminding me, Benji, they're selling the right to obtain sponsorship or giving the right to obtain sponsorship, and then hopefully this, I think is Irish investment company or something.
Sports indoors or something. I don't know if it's
Yeah,
Irish.
apparently they're
Dublin,
like
Dublin. Yes.
more, they'll be better equipped to go out, get the most money, and do that, etc. Whether that works, I mean, I'm all for people trying a different structure because hey, them trying to get sponsors themselves barely working. I was not like it doesn't seem to be working too well. They
Yeah.
only hung on by the skin of their teeth this year, so I'm glad they're trying to do something different. We'll wait to see if that is a viable model for teams going forward. But moving on to their Ardennes squad, Benji, having noted that their cobbled one's pretty solid. Is this the weakest part of their team?
It's kind of weird, huh? Because over the last couple of years, they would have NTT sign every single rider that was ever good at Amstel, Kreuziger, Pozzo Vivo, no, Pozzo Gasparotto, I mean, and Valgren. And right now, neither of those three is still in the team. So it's kind of mad how that switched around and
They
just
signed Enau.
the
He was second
collapse
at
of
Flesh in 2013.
who? Sorry.
Sergio Enau was second at Flesh in 2013, so that counts.
Yeah, but where is he now?
Yeah, but he was good in Ardennes. He was.
Yeah. Okay. I think Simon Clark's still a good shout though for the likes of Amstel.
Definitely.
Top 5 on the table, to be honest. If he's on the level that he was at EF, that is doable. Outside of him, I don't know what to expect. Robert Power, I don't know what his plan is in this team. He was destined to be one of the bigger Australians coming up a few years ago, but Haig really took that spot from him and became the rider that Power was meant to be. So, not sure what to expect. You Australian, do you know much about Power?
No, not really. I was. He did the Vuelta, right? I thought yeah, he didn't show much at the Vuelta. I don't know what's happening. Maybe he just didn't fit with the Sunweb with DSM. But yeah, I think you're right, Benji. That's a good shout. You know, Simon Clark, second in Amstel 2019. That's got to count for something, and he was still solid at the start of 2020. I think he's definitely going to be in that Ardennes squad. As you said, probably send Robert Power. Who else you
Goggle?
sent? And now probably
The
as
reason I'm
well.
sending Goggle
Goggle, yeah.
is the reason I'm
I
sending
see
Goggle
him
is
more
because
as a Milano
yeah,
Sanremo Strade guy.
yeah, Strada is the perfect child because he got ninth there last year. So I think he's a combination between Cobble and Hills, and I think he can do well in both. I recall him doing well in Amstel at some point in his career. Is that
He
2018?
has a good result
No, because of DNF
every
there.
2 years.
Yeah. So yeah, I just don't really know what to expect from Gogol, but I know that he's gonna be good in one of the races. And the likes of Estradi, the likes of a small hill classic, Brabantse Pijl perhaps, that kind of level, is more likely than an LBL. But I still see him perform well overall, and I hope that we see more from him because kind of cool guy.
Now, apologies if we're missing out of mentioning any of the younger guys doing really well, but I don't
Why
really
not?
see it, to be honest. So I think it'll be Clark. And I think if there was a younger guy I would have picked to do well in the Ardennes, it would have been Ben O'Connor, maybe as a long ranger with Simon Clark. But he's not on the team anymore. Giro Squad, I don't know if they've announced this already. I'm assuming they're sending the man, the myth, the legend, Pozzo, to the Giro. I think they are. So are they going to ride for him on GC again? Are they going to ride for him on GC and send people in breaks? Do they send Nizzolo to the Giro? I think they are. I think Nizzolo is going to do the Giro Tour double. I think Nizzolo is going to win at least 2 Giro stages, Benji. And apart from that, I don't really mind what they do at the Giro.
I'm all for Nizzolo, but I'd love to see him at the Tour de France kind of because if they send him to the Giro, they'd also have to send him to the Tour de France because otherwise they don't really have much for the Tour de France.
Apparently,
I would
he
say
is
on the
doing both.
team. Okay, so that's perfect then. As in, he can try and get stage wins in both, like Ewan is trying to do in all three this year. So I guess the sprint is like a challenge this year, but I think that Nizzolo could get stage wins if he's in the form of last year, not in the form of the 2 years before that. Because last year was kind of his breakthrough again as a sprinter after a few years of stagnating under the top, and now he could potentially lead more to the top, but I also don't think he's going to be beating Ewan anytime soon in all-out sprints every single day. So yeah, if it's a harder stage, he's going to come out in that podium for sure. And with the likes of the Giro, I see that as an option. Going to the Tour de France, he could also get some podium places. I I think that we're seeing a bit of changes in the sprinting scene as well, with the likes of Peterson now popping up as as a sprinter from Trek. Young riders popping up a bit more at the front as well. And I think that's going to make the trip for Nizzolo a bit more troublesome, but I still trust it. Outside of like Pozzo, Vivo, and Nizzolo, there's just not too much to the team, is there, for Grand Tours? Like, we're going to
No.
be talking about trying to make a Grand Tour team for the Giro, for the Vuelta, and for the Tour, but it's impossible because you send Pozzo to the Giro and you've got no one left. Aru for the Tour, but I would send Aru to the Vuelta because I'd love to see him try more smaller races first to try and get his feel for
Yeah.
cycling back up again, and then at the Vuelta he can go for stage wins, that kind of stuff. And by the end of the year, he would, if he finds a victory in a, I don't know, some of the smaller Italian classics perhaps, or stuff like that, and then he comes out to the Vuelta and he gets some podium plays or even gets a stage win in the breakaway at some point, and he's going to come at the end of the season and he's going to be really proud of what he's achieved after really troublesome years. And I think we need to see something like that from Mar. If you send him to the Giro, he's going to get slaughtered. If you send him to the Tour de France, he's going to get slaughtered by the people like the Pogacars of the world. So, yeah, Simon Clark, I would send him to the Tour de France because he can fight for the yellow jersey in the next couple of stages, just like those other 10 riders we've named for the first 2 stages, Muda Britannia and such. First 3 stages? I don't even know at this point.
I think for the Tour de France, it's pretty clear they should go stage hunting, and I think they can actually have a pretty strong squad. You have Nizzolo with a full lead out. You have Victor Campenaerts must go to the Tour and avoid the Giro and hope. He needs to pray that the Olympics are happening and that Dennis, Ganna, Remco all do the Giro and go to the Olympics and don't do the Tour. And then I think Campenaerts' best chance of a Grand Tour stage win is this year at the Tour, because it could be, I mean, it's still going to be strong. It's still going to be hard. It's never easy to win a Tour de France ITT, but if there ever was one with now Dumoulin's out Benji, I would have had Dumoulin beating Campenaerts, but now his competition is Wout van Aert, Thomas, Pogacar, and Roglic. So still not easy, but still a lot easier than against Ganna, Dennis, and Tom Dumoulin. So I think he goes, Clark goes, as you said, and Nizzolo goes, and you just hunt stages, and they could pick up 1 or 2, and that would be a really good result for them. And I think, I'd actually expect them to win a Grand Tour stage. If you add the probabilities of all those riders and what they're good at and the various opportunities, I'd expect them to pick up at least 1 at the Tour. Is there anyone else you'd send for Qhubeka Assos?
It's difficult to really name some riders at the moment. I think that, like you say, stage hunting is the business they go to in the Tour de France. In the Vuelta, I'd leave the opportunities in the hands of the youngsters, give them an opportunity. But also, if Pozzo Vivo, for example, after his Giro feels like he wants to ride another GT, just do it. Because what else do you have to offer when it comes to Grand Tour GC on that team? So I would definitely offer the chances to youngsters in the Vuelta and to riders who rode the first 2 Grand Tours, or one of the 2. I wouldn't send Nizzolo to all 3 unless he really wants to do it. And kind of try and use overlaps in riders. The strongest riders from the first 2 Grand Tours, send them to the Vuelta to try and achieve more. And I think that's the best way they can go about handling things. This is not a great team for Grand Tours, and I think we've mentioned that quite a few times already, so it's hard to specify what they would go to and who they would ride for at the end of the year in La Vuelta. But I guess the season will slowly but surely decide. If they see young riders popping up doing really well for their team in the smaller races, they might be more enticed to put them in the Vuelta as well and give them an opportunity for themselves. So,
I think Vuelta is going to be like Volscheid, Varcek, Sunderland, Power, and those sort of riders. And I think Nizzolo is going to have a very busy year. Same with Pozzo Vivo. Like, we're going to see Pozzo maybe at like Milano Torino will have its, I presume, traditional parkour back with the climb for Pozzo and co. Although, I think Uran and Pino usually go pretty well there, and Bernal's one there too. So it's always tough there. Nizzolo is, how he goes is really going to influence how this team goes. He's by far and away their best rider. I think he's really underrated, Nizzolo. I think he's up there with definitely the second tier of sprinters. I'd have him alongside Ackerman, and I'd have him alongside Ackerman. Different sort of strengths, but I just really rated how he looked in 2020 before that crash. So that's their Grand Tour squads. Now on to hot takes and predictions, Benji. So 9 wins last year, if I'm counting the Nizzolo European champs. Over under, I'm putting at 9 wins again. Over or under, Benji?
I'm going to do this correctly this time around. I think they're going to get more, and I think that over half of their victories are going to come from Nizzolo. I hope that this is the year that he can make it happen. I was a Nizzolo fan throughout his career because he always came second in the Giro stages, and I think that he's still looking for that Giro stage, right?
Yeah, I think
For
he
that
got
Grand Tour
DQ'd
stage.
once.
Yeah, the one time he was going to win it after all those years of getting second, they DQ'd his ass. Whether
Yeah.
that's good or bad, I don't remember because I don't remember the situation too much.
He deserved to get DQ'd. He chopped a guy pretty. He put a guy. Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Okay, but in the end, I hope that he can find his Grand Tour victory because it's the one he's been hunting for years. So, come on, Nizzolo, this is your year. So,
I hope so too.
I think they're going to go for a good 12-13 in total.
I'm going to go under. I think they're going to be consistent in the classics, and I said they're a good team, but I don't think they're going to pick up wins in the classics. I think it's going to be a lot of 4th to 7th, and we'll be like, that's pretty good, guys, but it's still not. It's still so hard to win Omloop or Kerner. It's hard.
Honestly,
yeah.
I would love if someone random that is listening or watching this podcast would count together all the victories we give each team and check if that actually fits in the season. Because at this point, I'm just giving it random numbers, and I'm probably just giving out numbers that are like double the amount of races we have this season in total.
I mean, listen, this is the Qhubeka Assos preview, so the only people listening will be the hardcore LRCP fans. So I'm sure one of them, if you're degenerate enough to listen to this pod 40 minutes in, then you probably might put that Excel spreadsheet together. We'll give you a shout out on Twitter if you do so. But yeah, I'm going under 9 wins. And my hot take for the year is that they win 2 Grand Tour stages. So I don't think they're going to win a lot of races, but I think they're going to win 2 Grand Tour stages. I think that'd be quite a nice result for them. What's your hot take?
It's not necessarily a hot take, but it's a hot take looking at. It's going to be a hot take for Nizzolo. He's going to win a Giro stage.
That's not a hot. No, that's not a hot take. No, that doesn't count.
Okay, let's do a hot take. Okay, I'm going to find one. Okay, I'm going to think about it. I think the hot take is going to be that.
Fabio,
I have no clue what hot take I'll pick. Fabio wins the Vuelta? What?
No, sorry. What was it?
My hot take is going to be the following. I think we are going to see. Oh man, why are you doing this to me? I think we're going to see.
Brave. Goggle Amstel Gold.
Michael Goggle is going to win a Grand Tour stage.
Okay, I'll give that to you. I think that's like.
Okay.
No, that is a hot take. That's a hot take. It's not as hot as some of our previous ones, but that's our Qhubeka Assos preview. Hope you enjoyed it, and give us a like down below on the YouTube video, or give us a rating on the podcast players if you've enjoyed it. And we'll be bringing out. I'm not sure how many World Tour teams we have left. I've lost count.
Enough.
We'll see you later. Ciao.